Welcome to the IVM Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Paodcast, presented by the Daily Pao.
This is Pranati.
And Amit.
And we're from thedailypao.com, a city-specific food and culture website. And this is our weekly podcast, the Paodcast. On this episode, there's just Amit and me. Purva is under the weather. She's our third partner, so she's unable to join us. This is going to be an installment of The Scene, a segment in which we talk about culture in the city. And this time we're going to be talking about 2 art shows that are currently on. So stay tuned for The Scene.
The Scene.
So on this episode, we are going to be talking about 2 art shows, and 2 art shows that are actually quite fun. I mean, not that you don't associate fun with art shows, but both of these sound really interesting. One has got to do with a giant mask, and the other has got to do with like these mechanical contraptions that suddenly spring to life. So
that's right.
Pranati, you went for both of them.
I went for both of them. I went on this gallery jaunt the other day. So I'll talk about the mask one first. It's by a Delhi artist called Princess P. And she's known as Princess P. No one knows her
real identity.
I mean, I asked the curator at the gallery if she knows her real name, and she does, obviously, but she refused to tell me. Anyway, so this is at Sakshi Gallery, and the name of the show is called Sunrise Ceremonies. So Princess P walks around with a giant mask over her head. It's like a huge head. It looks like a, cartoon character, a Pokemon character or something.
And it sort of reminded me of Dead Mouse, this DJ who sort of performs with this giant head. And of course his has got ears because, I guess it's there's an allusion to Mickey Mouse. But with here, she's got little like these protrusions that look like peas.
So that signifies hair. Those are little bunches of hair. And she's got 2 huge eyes. And that's pretty much it on the mask.
Yeah.
And the show is basically photographs of Princess P in a variety of very commonplace poses. So she's on the beach. She's getting out of bed. She's sitting on a rock, hugging a tree.
Okay.
Making
That's
tea.
not every day, but fine.
Well, okay, not hugging a tree. That's peculiar. But making tea in the kitchen, adjusting a shoe in the car park. So in a variety of very common poses. And these pictures have been shot over a period of 5 years and in various places across the world. And in all of them, she's wearing this giant mask. Now, she's been doing this since 2009. She's been Princess P since 2009.
Yeah.
And this photo series of her wearing a mask and performing routine things has started as an Instagram project in 2015. Okay. And now, the idea behind this avatar is that... So she has a sister.
Yeah.
And her sister is overweight.
Okay.
But she, on the other hand, is quite skinny.
Yeah.
And, I actually, while I was looking at the pictures, I really wondered where she shops because she was wearing very nice clothes.
Okay.
Anyway, so she's pretty thin, her sister's overweight, and people, have commented on her skinniness, and I suppose sort of said that she needs to put on weight and commented on her sister's weight as well. And the idea of wearing this head is to skew the proportions of her body and make a comment on how people perceive the body. And
also color of skin and hair, because those are other sort of defining characteristics.
Yeah. So the idea of wearing a mask and doing routine things is to suggest that you can be at home in your skin.
Yeah.
Whatever body type you have, whatever skin color you have, whatever your physical appearance is, you can be completely at home. And so that's the idea behind the mask. But this is a mask that she wears all the time. Like even in interviews to journalists, she has this mask on. And so aside from these photographs, you also have an installation. And this installation is of an elongated head. So you have the protrusion signifying bunches of hair on the sides, but the head looks like a big sausage. Okay. And there's two spaces for you to put your head through. And if you put your head through them, you see there's a video projector inside, and you see a film.
Okay.
And the film is of her walking through a field and
So
a
is it like
meadow.
a virtual reality thing, or is it
It's
just...
not a virtual reality. This little film is beamed inside, and you're just following her around, walking through this meadow, walking through grass, and you're just following her around.
But is the idea to sort of give you the experience of what it's like to be inside her mask?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
To be inside her mask, because apparently she can't see too much in there.
Okay.
And
But I mean, so the
idea is for you, the viewer, to enter her head symbolically. And, she's apparently a contemplative person.
Okay.
And this video is of her just taking a solo walk through the field.
But definitely getting some attention if...
if she put on this head. So, I don't know.
Because, when you talk about the larger context of her work, and I think that she touches upon a number of subjects. She touches upon, like, identity, clearly. She touches upon the idea of physical, beauty. And also, I remember reading this interview of hers where she talks, when somebody asked her about... the burqas, and she said that she actually thinks that they're absolutely fine because
men don't look at you the same way.
Yeah, because men don't look at women who are in burqas, and she was like, this sort of gives her this
perception.
Yeah, it gives her this kind of cloak, not just of anonymity where people can't see her face, but also people sort of look at her.
Right, and it sort of hides you from the male gaze.
Yeah.
So there is all of that in her work, but at the same time, you can't help wonder whether this is a gimmick.
Clearly, because, the flip side of that is like you're walking around doing everyday things in everyday places, wearing a giant mask, you're going to get looked at, right?
Yeah, you are going to get looked at, but that is also, I suppose, the idea, because the idea is to draw attention to how people look at proportion.
Yeah.
So, that's something that's arguable, but it's definitely something that's, I don't know, that's a talking point, and I'm sure people will be interested to see this show.
And you said that she started the project in 2015, but she has been using photographs of earlier than that, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So it started as an Instagram project.
Yeah.
This is what I was told by the gallery. But the pictures were shot over a period of 5 years. So she's been doing Princess P since 2009.
Yeah.
But this show was sort of born out of an Instagram project.
Okay, wow. So, all you Instagrammers out there.
Yeah.
Tomorrow you might have an art show.
Yeah, so the other one is right next door. The other show is right next door.
So this one did we say where it's on? Because it's on...
It's at Sakshi
Gallery in Colaba.
And it's on till February 23rd.
Okay, so you've got a while to go and check it out.
Yeah. And next door at Chatterjee and Lal, there's quite an interesting show. It's by an artist called Kausik, Mukhopadhyay. And it's called Squeeze Lime in Your Eye. So the show it's basically a collection of electrical machines. So what he has done is, what Kausik Mukhopadhyay, who teaches at the Kamla Raheja Vidyanidhi Institute for Architecture, he has taken ordinary household objects, most of them from, the 90s, like old telephones, old printers, mixies, toasters, cameras, all these objects. He's taken them apart and used the parts to create completely different mechanical objects. Okay, which have no ostensible use. For example, there's a tripod. So the tripod, the legs of the tripod look like legs of a spider.
Okay.
And you have a fan, which looks like a windmill. And you have a screw, a rotating screw. So it's just a weird-looking machine that he's created out of various parts.
Is there a sort of Wall-E-esque commentary going on over there?
There's not much... I think the commentary, it's really sort of his fascination with machines and his fascination with a sort of do-it-yourself practice. So, people who are fond of Michel Gondry films, this will resonate with them, because Michel Gondry is all about DIY.
Yeah, and these contraptions that these characters build,
Exactly. Or, like some people might even remember old cartoons, like, Mickey Mouse cartoons or Donald Duck cartoons, in which you often have, say, this strange-looking machine, say a glove which is attached to a drum which is attached to something else, and you press a lever and it beats someone for you. So for example, this American inventor and cartoonist called Rube Goldberg, used to draw these machines and design them for various cartoons. So people will remember that. And people will also think about, this fascination with machines, it's also a very 18th, 19th century European fascination. In fact, you have a lot of automata museums abroad. A lot of them are sort of musical automata, For example, you wind a key and some figure beats a cymbal. So that you'll be reminded of that. So it's a fascination with machines.
And it's also somewhat like a house of like magical objects, because you walk in there and you said that these objects sort of come to life if you
That's right. So some of them are just always on. They're all sort of wired to these circuit boards, but some of them are on timer. So you could be walking around a bunch of still objects and suddenly one of them will come on. So for example, there's a telephone, those old dial telephones we used to have, that shrieks like an alarm, every 10 minutes. So you have to spend a good amount of time there to be able to see enough of these things.
So they're not at the same time? So
they're not at the same time. They come on periodically. Suddenly this printer will start moving.
Okay.
And it has a ream of paper and this pen is scratching a pattern on it.
Yeah.
And then it stops and then the alarm starts shrieking and something else comes on.
This is part of the, the note that came. If you go there, you'll see this note there. And it talks about, now this part I understood, which is talking about how it basically makes a comment on how we made a transition from thrift to throwaway in a matter of decades, which is true, as increasingly as consumerism has taken over, pretty much everywhere, including India, where we've seen a sharp sort of increase in consumerism since the 1990s with liberalization, but like with, and all these objects are sound like they're pre-1990s.
Well, they're from the 90s, like a lot of them. The telephones, floppy disks, for example, dot matrix printers.
Yeah, but they're basically antiquated objects now, right? Things that you don't, like the floppy disks, nobody knows
things
what they are anymore.
Things that you'll only find in Chor Bazaar.
Yeah, and but now this is the part that...
this is the part that you really enjoyed.
Really enjoyed from this note, which says, riffing on the scientific working model and the booby-trapped as they do, these fantastic, seemingly whimsical ensembles refuse to sit still. Once the artist and his acolytes have propitiated the deities who preside over the wiring, and the synapses have fired across all contacts, rotors whirl, printer cartridges shuttle and chatter across take-up reels, alarms go off hooting and screeching. Calibrations of speed, an interplay of the regular and the erratic, a counterpoint between anticipation and unpredictability are integral to the performance. For these kinetic sculptures play their role in an eccentric ballet of mechanical and cybernetic objects.
Well, to be honest, I know this is not the clearest curatorial note, but to be honest, this is clearer than some of the other stuff that I have to read.
Because once you've described it, I see that this is actually what happens. But it could be explained in a much simpler way.
Well, this is the problem of curatorial notes in general. People just have to make them obscure. But, trust me, this is better than some of the other stuff out there.
Because, it sounds like a really fun show. But if I was to read this, I would I'm not going to understand anything about what the show is. And
well, I would just encourage people to not read the note, or maybe to read it while they're walking around the show or after the show, because the note does, as you said, it makes sense once you've seen it, but it's, it's a fun show, and it's quite amazing how he's, torn down objects to make these new ones, and it's entirely whimsical and fun.
Yeah, because they have no point.
They have no point, absolutely. And so it's just the idea of, the joy of invention. I think that's like the chief idea of the show, and it's a good show to watch.
Yeah, and like we said, I think what's interesting about these shows is that they are fairly accessible. You don't really need to have a deeper understanding or context to sort of go there, and with some of art, I think you do require that.
Yeah.
With these, I think
these are
you can
fun
just
shows.
Go enjoy them for what they are.
And this one is on till Feb 25th.
Yeah. At Chatterjee and Lal.
That's right. So that's it for this episode of the Paodcast, and we'll see you next week. For more on what's happening in this city, read thedailypao.com. Also subscribe to our newsletter on the website. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're The Daily Pao. And you can find this podcast on the IndusVox Media SoundCloud page, as well as iTunes, Stitcher, and TuneIn.
If you like listening to the podcast, you can also check out Cyrus Says, hosted by the Cyrus Brocha. It's an irreverent podcast on current events, urban India, politics, sports, civic sense, traffic, kids, food, and everything that matters. Well, mostly.
Hey man, just help me out, man. I need some podcast, man. I haven't had a fix in a week. Just need some.
Don't you worry about it. I got podcast galore for you, man. Just go to ivmpodcast.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Thanks, man. I'm gonna check it out.